What's up, guys? Welcome back to episode 6 of my poker vlog. First off, if you want to watch me punt off stacks in real time, I'm going to be playing on the Lodge live stream at the Lodge Card Club here in Austin this Monday, October 10th at 3 p.m. Central Time. That game is going to be 5-5-10 with a bunch of straddles and stand-up game mixed in, so super pumped for that. It'll be my first time playing here in Texas, and something about things tending to be larger in this state, I don't know. Anyway, look out for that link. I will post it on Monday ahead of the stream if you guys want to tune in. This video is from the second session I played at the Hustler Casino while in LA. It's been a long time coming, so I hope you guys enjoy it. And lastly, if you do like the video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and call me names in the comments.
What's up, guys? We just played an insane session at the Hustler. I lost the first $1,000 buy-in on like the third hand I played, but stuck around and were able to get it all back and even finish up a little bit on the day.
We arrive at the Hustler around 2 p.m. today. I've got my eye on a slightly larger win today, and let's get to it. This first hand, we look down at Queen 10 offsuit in the cutoff, and the low jack opens to $20, which is the standard in this game so far. Occasionally, we're going to 3-bet a hand this week, but we're still getting a feel for the table at this point, so we just call. Both blinds fold, so it's just the two of us heads up to a flop of 10-4-8 with 2 diamonds. The low jack yields the lead to us, which means we're likely ahead at this point with our top pair. When that's the case, I'm usually a big fan of adding money to the pot. We bet 20. The low jack does make the call, so we see a turn, which is the Queen of Hearts. The low jack checks over to us once again. This is a really good card for us to keep betting at. From the low jack's point of view, we shouldn't have many overpairs in our range after just flatting pre-flop, and this queen shouldn't be great for hands that bet the flop like 10x or a lower pair, unless we have exactly the hand we do have. We put out 45. The low jack may be suspicious that we're still on a draw. He puts in the money, and the river is the deuce of clubs. The low jack checks again. With the flush draw bricking out, it's a nice card to continue telling that story. We bet 105, which, looking back, I think is a bit too small. It is the right size to get a call from the low jack, though. We're pretty much always good when he does that. We show him top 2 pair, and he throws his cards in the muck, so we're going to win the first pot of the session. We go a couple orbits after this with nothing much, but here we look down at 2 red 7s in the low jack ourselves. Under the gun opens up the action to 15. This is a hand we're going to want to set mine, and we don't mind letting some other players in to get some value if we do strike gold. We make the call, and the hijack to our left raises it up to 45. The under the gun player makes the call. With the opportunity to close the action, we're getting a price so good we haven't seen it since pre-COVID inflation. We call as well, and we go 3 ways to a flop, which comes 9-deuce-3 with 2 diamonds. Under the gun checks. It's a spot where we're going to check most, if not all, of our hands to the 3-better, so we do, and the hijack puts out 75. Under the gun doesn't think for too long before getting out of the way and folding. I think the hijack will certainly have some overpairs, but he's just as likely to have a strong Broadway hand like ace-king, ace-queen, or ace-x of diamonds. We can't fold to just one bet, so we do call, and the dealer puts out the 10 of clubs on the turn, adding another flush draw to the board. We check it over to the hijack again, hoping he'll shut it down, but the hijack does not comply. Instead, he bets 200. It's not too large, just about half pot. I do think the hijack could still be on a draw, but we're likely to face a bigger shell on the river either way with a hand that's unlikely to improve, and we won't be too excited to bluff catch. We also have a diamond in our hand, which makes the front door flush draw slightly less likely. We decide to wave the white flag and let our hand go here. About 20 minutes later, we look down at another playable hand, the ace-deuce of diamonds in the cutoff. There's a $10 straddle under the gun, and the UTG +1 player opens it up for 30. This is another hand we're going to occasionally 3-bet, but we don't want to be doing it too often. We make the call, the button and the blinds fold, but the straddler puts in another 20 to join for the ride, so we go 3 ways to a flop of king 4 jack with 2 diamonds, giving us the nut flush draw. The under the gun player who called in the straddle has just a little under 200 left in his stack, and he decides all of that is going in the middle. The original raiser gets out of the way, and we have a decision that's almost boringly mathy. With this overbet into a pot of about 100, we're getting about 1.5 to 1 on a call, which means we need 40% equity to continue. I think the most likely scenario is that this jam represents a naked top pair. Against that hand, we'll have about 46% equity. It seems less likely this player would lead jam with a set or 2 pair, which would need less protection, but against 2 pair, we've got just 34%. However, there is still the possibility that this player is shoving light with some kind of combo draw like Queen 10 of diamonds. Against that hand, we're close to a 2 to 1 favorite, so given what we think his range looks like, this should be a profitable call. We do make the call, and we're off to a run out. The turn is the ace of spades, giving us top pair, which we feel good about already, but if there was any doubt, the river brings the 3 of diamonds, completing our nut flush. Our opponent tables king-queen offsuit for top pair on the flop, and we show him the flush. He is definitely not too happy to see that we called with just a flush draw. These internet kids with their damn numbers, am I right? He's clearly a little bit tilted, but he does end up rebuying, which is convenient because about a half hour later, we lock horns with the same opponent again in one of the strangest hands I think I've ever played in live poker to date. We look down at the ace-6 of hearts under the gun and open up the action to 20. Our friend in the cutoff, whom we recently stacked, is looking to get some of his money back. He makes the call, and the button also calls before both blinds let it go, so it's a little bit of deja vu. We go to another 3-way flop of Queen 10-6 with 2 hearts. We're first to act. With a flop that should be decent for our range and the nut flush draw to boot, we c-bet for $30. The cutoff isn't going anywhere yet. He makes the call, and the button is going to let the 2 of us fight it out again. He folds, so now it's just the 2 of us heads up to the turn, which is the 5 of hearts, giving us the nut flush. As a general rule, we like to bet when we know we have the best hand, but this is a spot where we're likely way ahead. Additionally, it's kind of a suspect spot to continue betting out of position. It's unlikely we would continue to bet even strong 1-pair hands like ace-queen in this spot, and we'd rather not polarize our range to flush or nothing just yet, so we check it over to our opponent. He puts out $40. It's a pretty small bet into this pot. But again, we'd rather not polarize just yet in case he has a hand with, say, the naked king of hearts and wants to take a stab on the river. So we just call, and the river comes the deuce of diamonds, a total brick. I think if we make a sneaky check one more time, our opponent is likely to bet a lot of the hands he bet on the turn with this river card, especially because we really shouldn't have the nut flush in this spot. We do check, and our opponent puts out $65. Again, it's a very small bet into this pot. I'm not exactly sure what to make of it, but we're definitely raising with the stone nuts. Eventually, we bump it up to 200. Pretty much as soon as we do, the cutoff snap calls. We table our hand quickly, knowing it's the winner. Everything is standard so far until another player at the table asks our opponent, and our opponent says, "Sure, man, sure you do." But then he shows the king 7 of hearts and my jaw drops.
What?
If the hustler wasn't so clean, I probably would have caught a few flies in there.
Whoa, look at Garrett's face. He seems somewhat disturbed. I mean, obviously, I'll just say it. Garrett thinks that this hand was not straight in some way.
Wow. The other players at the table share in the disbelief. With the second best possible hand on this board, the math nerds like me say you should always be rejamming there for value with a king-high flush, especially because we definitely could be check raising a lot of lower flushes as played, but what do I know? This guy was somehow able to soul read our exact hand and get off for the minimum. This is one of those hands that it's going to take us a little while to shake off, even though we did win it.
This doesn't seem super funny to me.
A couple orbits later, I'm still trying to wrap my head around how that happened when we look down at the 6-4 of hearts in the hijack. Under the gun +1 raises to 15. We make the call, and both players in the blinds call as well, so we go 4 ways to the flop, which comes 8-6 ace with 2 diamonds. The blinds check, and fortunately the pre-flop raiser checks too. With just bottom pair in a 4-way pot, we're happy to let it check through in position and take a turn, which is about as good as we could have hoped for. It's another 6, giving us trips. The action checks to us once again. This time we're not letting that fly. We put out 25, praying for at least one call. The small blind immediately obliges, and the other 2 opponents both fold, so we're 1v1 to the river, which is the 8 of spades. Now the small blind bets out for $60. We hate to see this. We do have a boat, but there just aren't many hands I expect the small blind can lead out here given the range we're representing that don't include an 8 or a 6. Still, 60 isn't enough to fold for. We put in the money and pray for a chop, but he shows us the bad news. He rivered a superior full house with Jack 8 suited to win it.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
The last notable hand of the session happens about an orbit later when we look down at pocket 10s in the cutoff. The hijack to our right opens it up to 20. This is a strong hand that we'd prefer not to play many ways, so we put in the 3-bet to $60. The small blind unexpectedly cold calls, and the hijack makes the call as well for the additional 40, so we go 3 ways to the flop of 6-6 king rainbow. Both opponents check it to us in position. On this board, we're going to be either pretty far ahead or drawing almost dead versus a 6 or a king, so we decide to check back for pot control, given there aren't too many turn cards we'll hate. The turn is the 5 of clubs, adding a backdoor flush draw. Once again, the action checks to us. I'm now convinced we're going to have the best hand here a lot of the time, so we put out a delayed c-bet of $85. The small blind isn't convinced though. He puts in the call, and the hijack folds, so we see a river, which is the 4 of spades, more than likely a brick, although a hand like 7-8 suited makes a straight. The small blind is apparently trying to tell this story, or that he has some other kind of big hand. He bets 225, about 2/3 pot. Our first instinct is to fold. This line, checking the turn out of position and leading river, is often done with value in these low stakes games, and it's a spot I think is probably under-bluffed by less experienced players. In reality, it's actually a decent bluff spot for the small blind though, because our range should be capped. Outside of exactly pocket kings, we can't really have a lot of the full houses like 6x or pocket 4s and 5s because we shouldn't be 3-betting those hands pre-flop, whereas the small blind can have all of these hands. Because of this, I think a sophisticated player is going to be bluffing here a good portion of the time. With 2 non-club 10s, we have an okay bluff catcher that doesn't block any of the busted club draw hands with which he might do this, so we do begrudgingly make the call, and unfortunately, our opponent is not bluffing. He turns over the 6-4 of diamonds for a full house. I'm a little bit surprised to see this particular hand given he cold called our 3-bet out of position, but it's a constant reminder that everyone has their own style and maybe I need to move up in stakes to where they respect my raises. Anyways, with that, we decide to admit it's just not our night and rack up. Last time at the Hustler, we squeaked out a small profit after battling back from Busto. This time we trended in the opposite direction. For about 4.5 hours of play, we're in for 1,000 and out for 662 for a loss of about 350.